Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, I have come to set the earth on fire. How I wish you were already blazing. There is a baptism with which I must be baptized. How great is my anguish until it is accomplished. Do you think that I have come to establish peace on earth? I tell you that rather division. From now on, a household of 5 will be divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. The father will be divided against his son, and a son against his father, a mother against her daughter, and a daughter against her mother, a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Please take just a moment to pray to the Holy Spirit for each other. Whoa, Jesus. This is a tough one. Here we have the person who we heard at Christmas time would bring peace to the earth. And here we hear him saying he's come to bring fire to the earth. That he's come to create division. Father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law. Well, that one I can believe a little bit. I've heard those before. But I thought Jesus was all about love, not fire and division. So when I first looked at this gospel at the beginning of the week, I'm like, where am I going to go with this? What is he trying to tell us? Well, I read a line from Pope Benedict that helped me. Pope Benedict said years ago, the fire of Christ's passion is love. So when we hear that word fire that Jesus is talking about, if you replace that with love and know that what he's talking about is setting the world full of love instead of setting the world on fire, it makes a big difference. And also, those of you who have families know that sometimes there's tough love. That you can be separated from a family member when you're not enabling to do something that's wrong, or when your teenager's out of line, you have to use tough love. And sometimes tough love can create some divisions. So I think he clearly knew what we'd be dealing with here on this earth. And when you talk about the fire being love, everything begins to make sense. When we baptize children back here at the font, at the end of the baptism, we light a candle. And we light it from that big Easter candle that's the only candle here on the night before Easter at the Easter Vigil, because it represents the fire of Christ's love that's being passed on. We light that baptismal candle, we hand it to the godparents, and we say, receive this light of Christ. This light is now entrusted to you to be kept burning brightly. That little flame of Christ's love, is entrusted to those godparents. And it's actually the case for each of us, because I think most of us here were baptized. When we were baptized, we were given that flame of God's love to carry out throughout our life. But how do we do that now? As we heard St. Paul say in that second reading, he gives us a pretty good clue to how we can do that now. He says, persevere, running the race that lies before us, while keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. When I was away for 4 months on what I now refer to as my unfortunate incarceration, but I'm actually just kidding, it was actually the best 4 months that could have happened for me at the time. But when I got there, I read this line from Paul, and I blew it up in big black letters and put it on my bulletin board in my room. Persevere, running the race that lies before us, while keeping our eyes fixed on Christ. I knew it was a tough time, but I knew if I kept my eyes fixed on Christ, He would pull us through it, or pull me through it, because He's the source of all love and all that is good. I was thinking back this week to when I was chaplain at Covenant Catholic High School. And you know, kids that age, often they'll come in and say, I've lost my faith. I don't believe in God. So you have to start from the beginning and say, what did you learn in the first grade about God? Well, God is love. Okay, do you experience love in your life here on this earth? Well, with my girlfriend and maybe with my family. I'm like, well, where do you think that love comes from? Kind of look into the air for a while, and then it's like, oh, yeah, we forget how simple it is. God is love, and we're all put here to share that love with others. He's the source of all love. So how do we do that? First, by prayer, every day, to tap into that love, to be filled with that love. Do we get up in the morning and start off by turning that day over to God? Then at the end of the day, take a little bit of time to reflect. Say, how well did I share God's love today? How did I experience God's love? If there are ways that we haven't, to say an act of contrition, to ask to be forgiven. Start over again the next day. And also by good works. Fortunately, here at St. Barbara's, we see that all the time. It doesn't take much to do something good, to get involved, to say something nice to someone, to make them feel good about themselves, to go visit the sick, just to say something to lift someone up. And also something very simple. Our kids and teenagers used to wear a bracelet, WWJD. What would Jesus do? It seems simple, but actually, in any situation in life, we can ask ourselves that question. What would Jesus do right now? And you know that Jesus would always have acted out of love. He didn't come to bring division. He came to bring love. But sometimes that love causes division. However, if we stay tapped into that love through prayer, eventually it will bring each of us peace. I'd like to wrap things up today with a quote from one of my favorite philosophers, French philosopher Teilhard de Chardin. I sometimes use this at weddings. Someday, after mastering the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness for our God the energies of love. And then for the second time in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire. That fire we're talking about today is the fire of Christ's love.